up, everybody? This is STORYHIVE on location in Vancouver with Vancity, Beats, Eats, and S'mores. My name is Kazi, the host of this show. We are broadcasting live on the unceded ancestral lands of the Musqueam, the Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish First Nations, what is colonially known as Vancouver, BC, what we call Vancity. And today on the show, in the red hot seat, we've got the one and only Bryce Koebel, like Taco Bell, but Koebel. Yeah. A multidisciplinary creative who lives and breathes movement and visuals. With over 15 years of dance under his belt, Bryce has taught all over Vancouver and co-leads the competitive crew, Gigabots, known for their popping, animation, and hip-hop flavor. Behind the camera, he's filmed dance content around the globe for brands like Red Bull and Stance Elements. And if you're into filmmaking, lifestyle, or camera gear, you need to check out his growing YouTube channel. We're streaming straight from Red Bull HQ in Vancity right now in Gastown. I'm super excited to sit down with you, to talk about dance, to talk about travel, community, and whatever else comes up in this conversation. Well, I'd love to start with, the very beginning. Like, who you were as a kid. Like, what do we need to know about who you were as a kid in order for us to understand who you are right here, right now?
I like to think all the best dancers come from Surrey.
Ayo.
But I grew up, I was always like the odd one out, kind of like in my family too, and like in my school. Like I felt like I never really like fit in with like the crowd or like kids and stuff. Like, I don't know. So I always just thought I was a little weird. But then I think I was just like, I was a very like introspective, creative kid. And then in high school, my neighbor, Henry, who's like the guy that started Heavy Hitters, so he lives across the street from me. So we've always just like hung out and we grew up playing together in the yard and like stuff like that. So he kind of introduced me to popping. He's like, oh, I'm learning this new thing. And he started learning from this guy named Trent, popping liquid.
Heyo.
If you know who that is, you're an OG.
Yeah.
But so Trent actually, who is like popping liquid, he was teaching at our school, our high school. We had like a whole dance program.
Which high school did you go to?
Fleetwood.
Okay,
yeah.
nice.
Went to Fleetwood.
Yeah.
And Fleetwood's where, like Victor Savage Rock came from. Mm-hmm. And so Victor was in the same generation as like, Jameson of like the Groovy Gentleman.
Yes.
And also like Poppin' Liquid, who was at our school. So they taught Henry. Mm-hmm. And so my brother actually got into breaking. And my brother was like learning like windmills and stuff from Victor. And then I was like, younger brother syndrome, like, I want to learn dance too. So I kind of got into it. And it was just like a really good outlet for me to kind of like just be creative. And I also felt like these were like the first friends where I was like, whoa, we all have something in common. And I just feel it was like easy to connect with people and stuff. And we all had similar humor. And I was like, I stood out a bit because I'm like really tall. So I was just like the tall white kid. And like amongst just a bunch of Filipinos, and I guess it was funny.
That's why you knew about Tita.
Yeah.
You grew up with Titas.
Yeah, I had like no white friends. It was just, I was all kinds of friends. So, yeah, I pretty much danced all the way through high school, and then after high school, I met AJ Megaman, and he was going to like I think Fraser Heights at the time, and so AJ was like, "Yo, I want to start a crew." And then Henry was like, let's start a crew. And then we just brought people that we knew who were poppers together and started dancing at like the Guildford Rec Center. And that place is still like iconic for dancing. And it's just like one thing led to another. We just started like making routines together and like training a lot. And we just kept going. Like it went from this thing that we did for fun to like, whoa, now we're like performing and like competing and traveling and like going to like different countries and battling and stuff. So it just slowly became a thing. But yeah, that's
amazing. The origin story. So that would have been what, like early 2000s or?
So we started the crew in 2010. That's like when we all kind of graduated. So I would say like I started, I guess, in 2006. Yeah. when I started dancing, but I tried breaking at first, but I was like too tall and heavy, and I was just like, this hurts.
So then how did you feel with popping when you first started?
Popping just felt more like interesting to me. Like I started watching, like there was like Salah and like these a lot of like dancers from Korea and Japan that were like doing crazy animation and stuff. And it was just very like, you know, when you see something and you're like, I like that. You know, not like, oh, I'm trying this thing, it's kind of fun, but then as soon as you see like the thing that you really like, and you kind of attach yourself to it, and that's how I felt. So it just made sense for my body too, because I didn't have to like do anything crazy, like any acrobatic stuff, right? I was just like, I could stand here and just like isolate my head, and people will be like, whoa, you know?
You can give like a very brief just education on the popping umbrella and then where you fall into that.
Yeah, popping is so interesting. Yeah, it really did start with like, they were called, I mean, there's so many different places where it was kind of originating, pretty much in California. It was popping off in the Bay, but the guys that I'd say really like publicized it were like the Electric Boogaloos. They were the ones that like started touring China and like taking it worldwide, whereas you know, back in the 80s it was just like a street dance, and like you maybe saw it on like the movie Breaking, but like that was like kind of, or you saw people like on the street busking, where it was like they're doing this for entertainment and to make money. But yeah, like I would say there was a lot of crews back in the day. The Electric Boogaloo lockers, which is what they originally were, they originally like I think like one of the like media, like when they were doing a show, they were like, oh, that name's too long, and so then they ended up just doing the Electric Boogaloos. So that's how they kind of ended up getting that. But then there's also like other crews from like the Bay, which were like, they were doing just like a lot of high school shows. Like they all started in high school, and they would do like routines, like strutting routines, which are like very heavy, like choreography, where it's like you go all these lines and stuff, and then everything's like, it's all about like lines, it's all about like uniformity and entertainment through like costumes and stuff. Actually, like they used to wear like a lot of masks and stuff, and that's where like the Jabberwockies were inspired by the old strutters from the Bay.
Cool.
So like that's why they started wearing the masks too and stuff like that. So there was a lot of influences, and I think that popping didn't really start like getting universally like known till like the 2000s, really, when they were like, you know, YouTube was blowing up, because like everything back in the day was like cassette tapes and like VCR and stuff. But
or you had to go somewhere and you seen it in a club or seen it on the street and then be taught by someone at a party.
That was it. It was all that. And then once, I think YouTube was the where everything blew up, and because then everyone were posting battle videos, and then a lot of like, you got to know like a lot of like these big European battles too, right? And that's kind of where like people were like, oh, I'm gonna take this internationally. So the next generation of poppers, which were like the, you know, like Salah and like Boogie Frantic and like all of these guys that just sort of like learned from these OGs, or like were inspired by the OGs, and then kind of took it to the next level. And yeah, it's just kind of grown. It just keeps going, and there's always different generations that push the boundaries more, right? There's so much to it. It's such a like, it's a very deep culture.
Yes.
You know, like,
and it has its, I mean, there's waving, there's animation, you know, and like dancers will specialize and really just go deep on one aspect or a few. For you, what is that?
It's true. Yeah, like our, I guess like heavy hitters, our main style was animation, and we learned it originally from Bop and Andre. And Bop and Andre was actually one of the first poppers in Vancouver. Like he moved here and he was teaching, and he had a crew. Like he was like absolutely owning it in Vancouver, and then he left. And then the next generation in Vancouver was like the Groovy G's.
Yes.
And the Groovy G's, they learned directly from the Electric Boogaloos, and so.
And they were groovy,
yeah,
like.
They were, and like they were. I mean, like they inspired us too. You know, like they were I mean, when we were graduating, they were like probably at their like peak of the crew where they were like running events and showcasing a lot. So it was cool. It was just like we looked up to them a lot, but it was funny because when we started, we were doing animation and they were doing more like boogaloo, which is just a funk kind of style. And there was like some tension between us because they were like, no, you guys aren't popping. And like, we were like, well, we are. Like, what do you mean? We're like,
you're like, it's evolving and this is where we're taking it.
But I think that people back in the day, like, I guess 10, 15 years ago, like, there wasn't as much like knowledge about like what the difference between these dances, like difference between like animation.
Right.
Like a lot of poppers didn't consider animation and robot like part of the dance. They were like, that's a separate thing. That's like a trick, you know, whereas like this is like the dance. But now it's like kind of, it's meshed where people are meshing boogaloo and animation together. There's so many different subcultures within all of these things too. Because like even with popping, it's like you have the boogaloo type of dance, but then like people like if you're like a boogaloo OG, like you're like, oh, boogaloo isn't popping. It's like that's a dance, but then popping is like the hit, and so then they're like that kind of merged. So like those two things were actually separate, and then like waving had its own subculture, and like gliding and ticking and like robot and everything. Like they were all sort of like had these subcultures that just it's almost like it was all adopted by this sort of dance because it all just sort of worked well together. But I don't know what happened in history, but I kind of just feel like there was like a point where everyone's like, all right, that's enough. This is it. You know, this is the umbrella. But it was kind of like, what do you mean? Like you guys were all experimenting and then it was like, all right, no more. And then now when people say like, oh, hip hop animation, it's kind of like, what do you mean?
Right.
It's like, why can't it work together? You know, like if you're a hip hop dancer and like you obviously have a good groove and you're, you know, your foundation, but then you want to add in some ticks and stuff, it's kind of like, why can't you do that? I don't know. I'm a bit more open-minded about it, but in terms of labeling, yeah, that's when it gets like complicated, right? Because I think it has to be very specific, but I don't know.
Labels, man. Like at the end of the day, the dance is something to be experienced and immersed in. Yeah. And like it's so hard to describe something with words that is like ephemeral and just, you know?
That's true. Yeah, you can't really describe certain things.
I'm hungry. Have you eaten?
I'm hungry too.
Yes, good. Because I brought you some yum-yums. Oshi sushi is basically pressed in a rectangle of rice with a meat thing on top. But in Vancity specifically, a chef named Nakamura, and he made it aburi oshi sushi. So he like did the flame torch on top and created this signature style, which now every sushi restaurant emulates. And it's my favorite. And you know, they put a little bit of a mayo sauce on top.
Wow.
The what do you call this? Jalapeno. Go for it. Dig in. And
yeah, this looks so good. I feel like I've just had like bread today and like
really
snacks.
Bread for Wonder Bread? We're gonna talk about that. I need to know how you got your name. Is it because you're white?
Yeah. It just turned into like one of my, I think it was Henry. He was like, you should just be called Wonder Bread. I'm like, I don't like that. I was like, that's kind of, I don't like it. But then
everyone kept doing it.
I don't know. Everyone kept calling me that. And I was like, it kind of grew on me. I was just like, all right, I kind of like it. It's kind of fun. Like it's just like, doesn't really mean anything. But like, I kind of like that. I didn't want to be like, my name's like Twisto B or like B Frizzle or something like weird like that, where I was just like,
Twisto B. Yo, that could have been your name, fam. No, but Wonder Bread there's no other. Okay, I want to ask you a question, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to know, how did you get into documenting and videography and all of that, especially within our community? Like, when did that start for you? Or have you always been somebody who just like had a camera and loved to shoot things when you were young?
I would say it was that. I think whenever I had access to a camera, I would always want to make just silly videos, like whether it was like with a phone.
I was totally this kid too.
Yeah. I don't remember like learning things. I was just like doing things where I'm like, oh, this would be funny, and then you like stitch it together. So it started off like that, and then like I just sort of was like always the guy in the group that loved taking photos. So whenever I would like go on trips, I would always be like doing BTS photos of like, you know, whatever. And of course, when Instagram came out, that's when I was like, whoa, I can share this now. I can just like pick up my phone and like show people where I am. Like, so I think it was just always the desire. I just had a desire to like capture things. And then I think when I got my first camera too.
Which was?
I had like an Olympus OEM1 or something. It was like an old, you know that camera?
Is it a DSLR?
Yeah. It's
Could
like
it shoot in video? Or what?
It shot really crappy videos and really small photos. But yeah, I think, and then, you know, there was a lot of photographers that started posting their actual photos, like their real photography, like off a camera onto Instagram. And then that's when everything started shifting, where it was like this, like at first, it's so funny. Like, you know how like things change and everyone at first is like, ooh, I don't know if I like that.
Yeah.
And then it becomes the norm.
Yeah.
That's what was happening with Instagram, where like it felt like cheating when people would post like professional photos. They were like, I don't know if I like this.
Because it was supposed to be Insta
Yeah.
off your phone.
Yeah.
Huh.
So then everything started to become more like high level, and like who can curated and who can post the highest like quality photos and stuff. So then I obviously jumped on that train. I was like, well, I want to post my photography camera, like my actual like DSLR photos on there. So yeah. And I did a bunch of things. Like I tried weddings, I tried corporate stuff, you know? And I think because I was so involved in the dance community, I was just like one of very few people who had a camera at the time who knew. And like there was, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 people. I remember like Dinah Zoo.
Yeah.
She always filmed every single battle and was just like, she was like, that was the person to do it. And then me and my crew started hosting battles too. Like it was more of a fundraiser that AJ was doing, but
what was it called?
Battle Zone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, and then I was like it was someone else filming at the time, but then I was like, oh, like I think I could like do a better job, and like I just want to try. So I was just like, I started filming our battles and like posting them on YouTube and stuff. So that's how that started, where it was like I was just doing it because I felt like I knew what to do, and I was like, I think I could do a good job at this. And then it's just, that's how it started. It was like 2012, maybe 13. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I don't know. It's just a lot. It was a lot of just like where the need was. You just sort of like wanted to help.
Yes.
And like
fill that hole.
Yeah. And like put your skills in. And like it's fun because it's like, oh, like people wanted to also shoot concept videos and stuff. Like I was involved with like the choreography scene too. So they always wanted like concept videos, and it was like, oh, Bryce, you have a camera, you're good at shooting, let's film a video. And it just kind of happened. And I was like, oh, cool. All right, let's keep doing this. Yeah.
Where do you think, and this is a question actually from Too Tall, shout outs, one of your crewmates. You want to know, where did the passion for this come from? And what do you hope to do with it in your future?
Oh my gosh.
I know, right? It's such a big brother question,
That's
too.
big pressure. Why are you doing this? Who do you think you are? I think I've just always liked film, and I've always just liked the art of photography, and like I love telling stories, I think mostly, because even when I was a kid, like I used to just tell these very elaborate stories of my toys and like set up these scenes and like act out movie scenes that I knew about with my toys. So there was always this sort of like imagination, I guess, I've had, where it's like I like sort of the storytelling aspect of it. And then I also just like the tech behind it too. Like I get really nerdy about camera tech, and then that just kind of merges together. Yeah, I think that it was just always something in me that I enjoyed doing, and it just felt like a good outlet for that. You know, dancing was one thing, but I think like actually telling a story and like filming it just felt different. And I guess like where I want to take it, like I don't know. It's like I think that for me, I've always wanted to do my own thing rather than sort of like, I guess, work for someone else. And like, so that's kind of where the passion for YouTube started, where it was like, oh, I would love to like make my own content on my own terms and like eventually get paid for it or like make it into a career. That would be the dream. I think like having YouTube be full time, but that's just like still kind of a long ways away. I remember I was doing a live stream camera for like a Red Bull event, and like it was the production guys were like, I had never used the camera before. I was just like, okay, this thing's giant. I feel like I'm like shooting like an entire like, you know, like a huge event. I was just like, this is weird. But I got used to it because I was like, okay, I just have to figure out how to focus, how to move my thing, how to like zoom in and stuff. And the production guy was like, he was getting so stressed because I didn't know what I was doing with the camera at first. Yeah. And he's like, just don't screw up. You're going to get yelled at. And he was like putting all this pressure on me. And I was like, okay. But he didn't realize that I had been like shooting dance for a long time. Yeah. And then like when the thing started, I was like, everything was fine. Because I was just like, I just have to follow the dancer and like anticipate how they're moving. And everything was fine in the end. So I was kind of just like, oh, but if I didn't know anything about braking, I would be like so stressed, like just like, oh, where are they going to go? Like, because you're moving with them and then all of a sudden they push off and go this way and you're like, whoa. So it's like it's a weird sort of like, you kind of have to like, you have to know ahead of time what they might do. Speaking
of being able to go and document like international huge events, you know, you've been working with Stance Elements, which, you know, they're a media company from LA, I want to say. How did you get in with them?
It's like a lot of like serendipitous moments, you know, like I went to San Francisco. I was like in between relationships, you know how it's like you break up and then you're like, what do I do? Yeah.
I need to go meet some new honeys.
I need to go. No, I went and hung out with dudes and popped and I guess got super nerdy. Yeah. But I went to the Bay and I met this guy named Tech. No, actually, I originally met Tech at VSDF, and then he was like, if you ever come to the Bay, hit me up. So I hung out with him and a few other people. Shout out to Raul. We have the same birthday. We hung out, and then Tech was like, hey, there's this event called Freestyle Session, and they're starting like an All Styles room. They're like, do you want to come and film the All Styles room? Because we don't really have another person. I was like, sure. So I did that. That was 2017, and I was like very underprepared. And like, I think I did an okay job, but I was like heavily underqualified compared to them. So I was like stressed out. And then I even got sick on the trip too. So they were like out hanging out and having a good time. And I was like in bed. And I was just like, this is a bad look. So then like, there wasn't really any communication after that. Yeah. I didn't really work for them again, which I was like, frick, maybe I did a bad job. Yeah. But I also just think I wasn't ready. And then 2022 or 3 rolls around and I started filming with Hamuza, who's a dancer from the city. Yes. Because he wanted to like push his own dance. So we started posting, you know, filming solo videos of him and posting them on Instagram. And then Daniel, who I guess I already knew, he reached out to me and was like, he's like, this is dope. Why don't you just post it on the Stance Instagram? And I was like, okay, sure. It just was so casual. And then all of a sudden, like a week later, he added me to the group chat. He's like, just come in the group chat. And I'm like, okay. And over time, I'm like, does this mean I'm in Stance? But it wasn't like an official thing. It was just kind of like, oh, like here, you're posting on our page now. So, and I was like, okay, sure. And then it just sort of
You didn't get the official put down. You had to battle everyone. Like you just, you got added to a group chat.
It just kind of happened. And then they were like, oh, we have more events. Like, do you want to film some more events? And I was like, sure. So, yeah, it just kind of happened.
So of all the places that you've been and all these like major events that you've gotten to film, like what has been your favorite and why?
This is so tough. Probably Jack of all trades.
Ooh, in Montreal?
Oh, yeah.
Which year?
I mean, it gets better every year.
It's true.
Yeah. But I would say like last year was really dope because...
As in 2024 or 2023?
2023.
That was really good.
It was really good.
Yeah.
It was good. And they have like a really good setup that like they have just a whole week of, stuff, it's just cool. And like, there's so many different things you can do. And like, it just feels like a big community event. And I got to film there and like, post some highlights from there on Stance and stuff. And so that was fun. And then I think the second one would be like going to Slovakia for this breaking event called Outbreak. And like, it's like one of the biggest breaking events in like the world. Like there was everyone there. Phil Wizard was there. I think he won or came second in the 2v2. This was like literally right after the Olympics. Like, I think that's the funniest thing about breakers is that they went to the Olympics and then they were like, all right, cool, on to the next thing. It was just like another event for them.
Yeah. That's their life.
Yeah.
Battles.
Like we were there was a nightclub after party.
Yeah.
And Phil walks in with his gold medal.
Yeah.
And like puts the gold medal on the DJ's neck. So the DJ's up there like DJing with the gold medal. And then Phil walks around with like these like bottles of liquor and he's like filling everyone's mouth. And he's just like, it was the funniest thing ever. I was like, what is happening right now?
Do you have any dancers that you're like, this is like my dream to be able to like shoot a video with you or a concept video or something like this?
There's some like, I would love to shoot like, this is so random. Like I would love to shoot with like Kinjas because I like the Kinjas. I feel like they do a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah.
I like actually shooting like choreography videos because like they're usually really like, I don't know, they're like very different from freestyle videos, right? It's just like a freestyle video is like boom, all right, dance, and then that's it. Because it's like the more focus is on the person, but then the choreography video is like, it's more of like a set. It's more of like a whole like production kind of thing.
I mean, it's really cool to hear your origin and come up story and, the formation of Heavy Hitters. And now you're teaching Gigabots,
that's true.
And you've evolved so much going from student to now like teacher. What would you say is your relationship to dance now?
I think I had a heavy shift last year where I really wanted to focus more on being like a mentor and like teacher. Like I think I've done everything I've wanted to do in terms of like competing. Like I've been to like really big events and tried my best. And I'm like, hey, I went as far as further than I ever wanted to go. But now it's like I'm seeing a lot of value in teaching and kind of prepping the next generation of dancers. And yeah, like that's kind of what we're trying to do at Gigabots is like teach them proper animation, proper hip hop, and showcase that on stage, not just for the sake of like getting a medal, but like really just showcasing like, hey, this is like, we're actually good at this. Yeah. How
would you say your philosophy on dance has evolved?
My philosophy was always very competitive. I think growing up, very competitive, very like performative. But I would say it's more of a lifestyle for me now, and it's more of like an outlet of expression. I still like performing. Like I still like the feeling of, I think some people gravitate towards like performing and being in front, but then other people, they just want to do it and move. It makes them feel good. And like,
that's my type, me.
There's no right answer either, right? And like, but I think I just, there's always like some people push dancers towards one thing. They're like, this is where you should strive for. But I think I'm just always trying to help people like love the dance rather than like just, drill them until they're like perfect. And then eventually they hate the dance, like, I'm like, I want them to be good, but I want you to like love it. I want you to still like love it as much as I do, where it's like I'm nerding out, I'm watching videos on my own time, and I'm like, it's a passion, right? Well,
I think that's beautiful, Bryce, especially as you are evolving into this stage of your life where you are passing on to the next generation and to the youth. It's like, I grew up with not wanting to continue with piano lessons, even though I love the piano, because it was so drilled into me, like this idea of perfection around it, that it killed the love, versus like you're approaching it from like, just want you to love it. you know, and keep loving it. And that's a beautiful philosophy and a way to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's helped me. Yeah, but okay, I'm glad it's a philosophy. I'm not just talking out of my butt here.
You were, but it worked.
Okay, good. That's how it usually happens for me. It's just freestyle.
Freestyle. Speaking of which, we are at our hour. An hour has gone by so fast.
Yeah, it did actually. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's been so nice to like hear more of your story, get to know you more, have amazing sushi, and
Oh my
you
gosh,
know.
thank you for that.
But yes, this has been Bryce Koebel, Kazi, and you have been watching Vancity Beats, Eats, and Schmore.